What would you do if you were working 3 jobs, sleeping only a few hours a night, struggling to put food on the table, and still smiling for your children every day? Now imagine that after years of sacrifice, an unexpected gift arrives and changes everything in a single moment. But this wasn't just a gift of money. It was a gift that restored hope, faith, and belief in humanity. Stay with me until the end of this story, because the final act of kindness is something that touched an entire community, and will remind you that even in our darkest moments, miracles can appear when we least expect them. Every day before the sun even began to rise, Sarah was already awake. While most of the city was still sleeping peacefully, she was quietly preparing for another exhausting day. The alarm clock would ring at 4:30 in the morning, but the truth was she rarely needed it. Stress had become her alarm clock. Worry had become her morning routine. As a single mother raising 2 children on her own, there was no room for excuses, no room for rest, and certainly no room for giving up. Every single day felt like a race against time. She would quickly get dressed, prepare breakfast for her children, leave a note of encouragement on the kitchen table, and head to her first job before the sky turned bright. Most people who passed her on the street saw nothing unusual. To them, she was just another worker starting her day. They had no idea she was carrying the weight of an entire family on her shoulders. Her first job involved cleaning office buildings before employees arrived. She vacuumed floors, emptied trash bins, and wiped down desks that belonged to people earning more money in a month than she earned in a year. Yet she never complained. She simply kept moving. After finishing that shift, she rushed to her second job at a local diner. There, she spent hours serving customers with a smile on her face, even on days when she felt completely exhausted. Some customers were kind, others barely looked at her. Some left generous tips, while others left nothing at all. Regardless of how she was treated, Sarah continued serving everyone with patience and respect, because she knew every dollar mattered. By the time her second shift ended, most people would have gone home to rest, but Sarah's day was far from over. She headed straight to her third job, stocking shelves at a grocery store late into the evening. Her feet hurt, her back ached, her body begged for sleep, yet she continued working because there were bills waiting at home. Rent had to be paid, school supplies had to be purchased, groceries had to be put on the table, her children needed clothes. Every hour she worked represented another opportunity to provide for them. What made her struggle even more remarkable was that she never allowed her children to see how worried she truly was. When she finally returned home late at night, she greeted them with a smile. She helped with homework, listened to their stories, and encouraged them to dream big. She wanted them to believe that their future could be different. She wanted them to see possibilities instead of limitations. Even when she was physically exhausted, she made sure they felt loved, supported, and protected. Behind closed doors, however, there were nights when she sat alone at the kitchen table staring at unpaid bills, wondering how she would make it through another month. There were moments when fear whispered that she could not keep going. There were moments when the pressure felt overwhelming. But every morning, she found the strength to stand up and do it all again. Despite carrying more burdens than most people could imagine, Sarah never allowed hardship to change the kind person she had always been. Many people believe kindness comes naturally when life is going well, but true kindness reveals itself during difficult times. Sarah's life was filled with stress, exhaustion, and uncertainty, yet she continued finding small ways to help the people around her. Every morning, as she arrived at the office building for her first job, she greeted everyone with warmth and respect. The security guards looked forward to seeing her because she always asked how their families were doing. The maintenance staff appreciated her because she treated them as equals. While others rushed through their day without noticing the people around them, Sarah made others feel seen and valued. At the diner where she worked during the day, her kindness became even more visible. Customers came from all walks of life. Some were cheerful, while others carried their own frustrations and worries. There were days when customers complained about things that weren't her fault. Some spoke harshly to her, others ignored her completely. Yet Sarah responded with patience and understanding. She knew that everyone was fighting battles she couldn't see. Instead of matching negativity with negativity, she chose compassion. Her smile often brightened the day of people who arrived feeling discouraged. A few regular customers even adjusted their schedules just so they could sit in her section because her positive attitude made them feel welcome. One afternoon, Sarah noticed an elderly man sitting alone at one of her tables. He appeared confused as he searched through his wallet. After quietly speaking with him, she learned that he didn't have enough money to cover his meal. Without hesitation, Sarah paid the difference herself. It wasn't a large amount, but for someone already struggling financially, every dollar mattered. The elderly man thanked her repeatedly, his eyes filled with gratitude. Sarah simply smiled and told him everyone needs a little help sometimes. She never expected anything in return. For her, kindness wasn't an investment, it was a choice. Her generosity extended beyond the diner. At the grocery store where she worked evenings, she often helped customers carry heavy bags to their cars. She stayed a few extra minutes when elderly shoppers needed assistance finding items. She listened patiently when lonely customers wanted someone to talk to. Even though her schedule left almost no free time, she still volunteered at her children's school whenever possible. Teachers admired her dedication because they knew how much she was sacrificing just to be present for her children. What Sarah didn't realize was that people were paying attention. The elderly man she helped never forgot her kindness. The regular customers noticed how she treated everyone with respect. Her coworkers admired the way she remained positive despite her challenges. Parents at the school saw how hard she worked while still finding time to support her children. Every small act of kindness left a lasting impression. One person told another. Stories about her generosity began spreading quietly throughout the community. Sarah continued living her life, unaware that the seeds she had planted through countless acts of compassion were slowly growing in ways she could never have imagined. For years, Sarah had become used to disappointment. Every time she thought things might finally get easier, another bill would arrive, another expense would appear, or another challenge would demand her attention. She had learned not to expect miracles. She had learned not to hope for sudden breakthroughs. Instead, she focused on surviving one day at a time. That particular week had been especially difficult. Her car needed repairs she couldn't afford, her youngest child required new school supplies, and rent was due in just a few days. As she sat at her kitchen table late one evening, surrounded by unpaid bills, she felt more overwhelmed than ever before. For the first time in years, tears rolled down her face as she wondered how much longer she could continue carrying such a heavy burden. The following morning seemed completely ordinary. Sarah followed the same routine she had repeated thousands of times before. She woke up before dawn, prepared breakfast, kissed her children goodbye, and headed to work. Nothing about that day suggested it would be different from any other. As she worked her shift at the diner, she focused on serving customers and staying busy. Around lunchtime, her manager approached her with an unusual request. He told her that several people from the community wanted her to attend a small gathering at the local community center after work. Confused and slightly nervous, Sarah asked what the event was about. Her manager simply smiled and said she would find out soon enough. Throughout the day, Sarah couldn't stop thinking about the invitation. She wondered if something was wrong. Perhaps there had been a misunderstanding or a problem she didn't know about. By the time her shift ended, curiosity had replaced her uncertainty. She drove to the community center and was surprised to see the parking lot completely full. As she entered the building, she noticed dozens of familiar faces. Customers from the diner, coworkers from her jobs, teachers from her children's school, neighbors, and even people she barely knew were gathered together. The room suddenly grew quiet as everyone turned toward her. Sarah stood frozen, unsure of what was happening. Then one of the organizers stepped forward and began speaking. He explained how countless people throughout the community had been inspired by her strength, kindness, and determination. He spoke about the sacrifices she had made for her children, and the positive impact she had on everyone around her. As he continued, Sarah realized this gathering was for her. Tears immediately filled her eyes. She looked around the room and saw people smiling, many of them emotional as well. Then came the moment that left her completely speechless. A large presentation board revealed that the community had spent months secretly raising money to support her family. Contributions had come from customers who remembered her kindness, coworkers who admired her work ethic, parents from the school, local business owners, and even strangers who had heard her story. The amount displayed was far greater than anything Sarah could have imagined. Her hands began shaking as she struggled to process what she was seeing. But even more touching than the financial support were the hundreds of handwritten letters placed on a nearby table. One by one, she began reading messages from people whose lives she had impacted through simple acts of kindness. Some described moments she barely remembered. Others shared stories of how her encouragement had helped them through difficult times. With every letter she opened, she realized that the compassion she had given so freely over the years had touched far more people than she had ever known. As the evening continued, Sarah sat quietly in her chair, surrounded by people who cared about her, holding letters filled with gratitude and encouragement. For years she had felt invisible. She believed she was simply doing what any mother would do for her children. She never imagined that so many people had noticed her sacrifices. Looking around the room, she saw faces from every part of her life. Customers from the diner, coworkers from her jobs, teachers, neighbors, and complete strangers had come together because they believed she deserved support. At that moment, something far more valuable than financial assistance entered her life. For the first time in a very long time, she felt hope. Many people underestimate the power of hope. They think hope is simply a feeling, but in reality, hope can transform the way a person sees the world. For years, Sarah had been living in survival mode. Every decision revolved around making it through another day, another week, another month. She rarely allowed herself to think about the future because the present demanded all of her energy. But as she listened to the stories people shared that evening, she began seeing possibilities she had almost forgotten existed. She realized she wasn't fighting alone. She realized there were people willing to stand beside her during difficult times. When Sarah returned home that night, her children immediately noticed something different. For years they had seen their mother come home exhausted, worried, and emotionally drained. But that evening, there was a light in her eyes they hadn't seen before. She sat down with them and shared everything that had happened. As she explained how hundreds of people had worked together to help their family, her children listened with amazement. They couldn't believe that so many people cared. More importantly, they couldn't believe that their mother's kindness had inspired such generosity. That conversation became one of the most important moments in their lives, because it taught them a lesson they would never forget. It showed them that kindness has the power to connect people in extraordinary ways. News of the fundraiser quickly spread throughout the community. Local residents began sharing Sarah's story with friends and family members. People who had never met her became inspired by her determination and resilience. Some started organizing similar fundraisers for other struggling families. Others volunteered their time at local charities. Business owners launched programs to support single parents. Teachers introduced kindness projects in their classrooms. What started as an effort to help one hardworking mother gradually evolved into something much bigger. A single act of generosity had created a chain reaction that continued touching lives throughout the community. The most remarkable transformation happened within Sarah herself. The financial support certainly helped ease many of her burdens, but the emotional impact reached much deeper. She no longer viewed herself as someone simply struggling to survive. She began seeing herself as someone capable of inspiring positive change. She started speaking at community events, encouraging others not to give up during difficult times. She shared her experiences with parents facing similar challenges and reminded them that asking for help is not a sign of weakness. Every story she told carried the same message. Even when life feels impossible, hope can return when you least expect it. Sometimes the smallest act of kindness becomes the spark that changes everything. And sometimes the people who need hope the most become the very people who inspire hope in others. Sarah's story reminds us that true strength is often hidden behind ordinary faces and everyday struggles. For years, she worked 3 jobs, sacrificed her comfort, and carried burdens that few people ever saw. Yet through every challenge, she chose kindness over bitterness, compassion over anger, and hope over despair. She never knew that the small acts of generosity she showed to others were quietly changing lives and inspiring an entire community. When the unexpected gift finally arrived, it was more than financial support. It was proof that kindness is never wasted, and that even the smallest good deed can create ripples far beyond what we can imagine. Her journey teaches us that difficult seasons do not last forever, that perseverance has power, and that people are often watching the example we set, even when we feel unnoticed. Most importantly, Sarah's story shows us that hope can appear when we least expect it, and sometimes the kindness we give to others finds its way back to us in the most extraordinary ways. As you move forward from this story, remember that every encouraging word, every helping hand, and every act of compassion has the potential to change someone's life. You may never fully see the impact of your kindness, but just like Sarah, you could be creating a difference that reaches far beyond your imagination.